In this session of the Purple Coffee Podcast, I speak to Marsha Shandur about the hustle and bustle and how relationships are what pull you through. Hello and welcome to session 27 of the Purple Coffee Podcast, inspiring stories from creative entrepreneurs. I am your host, Turn Dog, and on this occasion I speak to the delightful Marsha Shandur about building relationships and how these are the key to get you through the hustle and bustle of starting your business. Oh yes, Marsha has a mistake to share with us, and as often is the case, it's for my book, The Successful Mistake. A collection of stories about an entrepreneur's grandest faux pas and how they turned it around. And I am now writing this book and invite you, my misfit brethren, to be part of the entire process. Oh yes, sneak peek access, deleted snippets, your feedback on things like cover blurbs and launch strategies, and freebies galore as we go along. I encourage you to head over to bit.ly/purplecoffee27 and to sign up. Quite frankly, you'd be a maniac to not give me your email and allow me to bring a little bit of vitality into your week each week. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Anyway, be sure to do it. I'd love to have you on board. I'm trying to share this journey with as many people as possible. So when you sign up, then spread it around your loved ones like a bee does with pollen. Oh yeah. But before you do that and vanish off into the internet ether, we have an interview with Marsha to consider. And my oh my, does she have some fine words from us. Her great mistake revolves around just up and leaving her job and life in Scotland to set up in London. A bit of a dream, young naivety maybe, but she did it and she found some hardship along the way and had to hustle and bustle herself back into employment. So whether you're starting your own business or just trying to find a job, I'm sure you can understand and sympathize with Marsha's tale. But the key to the story is her building of relationships, and it's this that has left her to her world today, where she now lives in New York, helping people overcome anxiety and issues in the world of networking. Oh yes, networking, such a horrendous word and one that brings shivers up my spine. But Marsha has the tools to get you through it, because it was her building of relationships that always made sure she got jobs and had opportunities. And something that I've learned along this success mistake journey is relationships and knowing people and just helping and providing value. That will get you through more often than not. So I'm going to pass things over to past version of me and past version of Marsha to present version of you, so you can listen and watch and take it all in. I hope you take a great deal from it. I know that I did, so be sure to take some notes. But first, you may be wondering a little bit about Marsha and who she is. So I created a storytelling-based bio in a way only I can, and I will now share it with you in the hope that you will learn a little bit more about Marsha in a way. So let's do this, shall we? Ah yes, Marsha enjoys the word yes, so much so that she introduces herself as Yes, Marsha. I like this because it's a good word. It's a fine word, a strong word, the kind of word that you want to say, well, yes to. A fellow Brit like me, Marsha has worked on some of the finest radio shows in the UK and has a sublime taste in music that I can get on board with. Talk about a cool cookie. Marsha knows her stuff and she's more than happy to share it with other folk like myself and like yourself. But these days she helps people stand out and feel comfortable at events, because networking at the best of times is tough. After it helping her like nobody's business, this is her true calling and she's an unofficial superwoman in the world of networking. Will she make it official one day? Who knows, my friend? Who knows? But let's see what she has to say, shall we? And see if she makes it official during this conversation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. I am delighted to have on board today Marsha Shandur, who is the person behind Yes, Marsha, which is all about helping people like your good self network.
And it's something that a person like me certainly needs help with, because networking is tricky indeed. But as soon as you start working for yourself in any kind of capacity, it's the key to your world, whether you like it or not. And whether you're introvert or extrovert, it's something you can't escape. So Marsha helps people get the most out of their networking, and I'm very intrigued to hear about her big juicy mistake, which is all in aid of the successful mistake. So Marsha, first of all, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Well, before we get into your story and your mistake, which you teased me a little bit with a bit of info beforehand, so I'm excited to hear it myself. Please just start us off by explaining what it is you do and who you are and why you're basically a Brit currently in Canada.
So I'm a Brit in Canada because I fell in love with a Torontonian, so that's not really a business decision. But what I do with Yes Yes Marsha is I help people, like people who know that they're really good at what they're doing, but they're not quite as successful as they know they could be. Like they see other people who are really killing it and they think, I'm better than they are, like I'm at least as good as they are. And I teach them how to do networking, and it's something that so many people I know think that they really hate. And actually, I think it's because most people have a certain idea of what networking is, and that it's all about schmoozing and it's all about like promoting yourself and, you know, walking up to the most important person in the room and saying, listen, I'm really amazing. Here's all the ways that I'm amazing. And most people hate that, understandably. And actually, what I show people is that it doesn't have to be like that. And there's ways of doing it that are like genuinely comfortable. And actually, you mentioned extroverts and introverts, and lots of people say, oh, but I'm an introvert. I hate networking. But I think that introverts make the best networkers, because actually, networking isn't about the kind of pizzazz when you meet someone. It's all about long-term relationships. And it's all about, and most of it happens over email. And that's when introverts are usually really thrive, because they have time to sit and think and plan things out. So, yeah, I kind of work with all different kinds of people, but even people who are like literally terrified. So one of the things that I'll do is give clients a script for what to say when they walk up to a stranger at a conference. And sometimes that's like, hi, I'm Matthew, what's your name? But it's just kind of giving people the permission to say that or whatever, and giving them step-by-step instructions, because that's how I learn best.
Yeah, that's really cool because, you know, I'm like one of those people you come across all the time. I'm not a huge fan of networking, but it's because the perception's there of, you know, that guy who comes forward at you straight away, and his first thing is basically like, here, my name's Jeff, take my business card. And as soon as he finds out you're not someone who he can sell to, he's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go over here, and you're just left there going, what's just happened to me? I feel like I've been mentally abused.
Well,
But
so
for the most part, networking,
but people think that that makes a good networker, but
yeah.
obviously because you feel like you need a wash after you speak to
Oh
him.
my gosh, yeah,
He's doing a bad job.
it's horrendous. But whenever I go to a networking event, I mean, I'm always of a mindset of quality over quantity, and I always come away with, like you say, some people to email, and you speak to them afterwards, and you gain these relationships. And I look back of every kind of networking event I go to, and I go, wow, I've met cool people doing this. I need to do it more, and I need to just kind of change my mindset. But it is harder than, you know, easier said than done, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I feel like with a lot of the clients that I work with, a huge chunk of the beginning of our sessions are me just trying to shift their mindset around all of this. And one of the things is I'm like, I hate the word networking, obviously, because everyone's like networking. Ugh. And you know, I hate that I have to say, well, that's my job. So I call it making industry friends. And I think when you go to an event like that, you shouldn't be looking at the room and being like, oh, who should I be networking with? What you should be doing is looking into the room and saying, who here would I actually be friends with in the real world? Like, who would I be friends with irrespective of what our jobs both are? And then those are the people that you talk to.
Nice. No, I like that. I like that, and I think I'm going to need to be devouring all your content because it's something I need to get better at. So, I will be checking out your site, and I encourage everyone else to check out Yes Yes Marsha. I'll be putting the links below this video and all the info for Marsha, so go and check her out. But first, before you do that, we do have a little discussion, and it's all in aid of Marsha's great mistake, which is in aid of the successful mistake, a book I'm currently working on. So I'm just going to pass it over to you, Marsha, and please tell us your story, which I know is more related to your time in London when you were working for a radio station. So I'm intrigued to hear what it's all about. Tell us about it and the journey it's taken you on since.
So I was a radio host. That was kind of my main bread and butter for about 15 years. And I started up in Edinburgh where I'd been a student, and I stayed there working at a radio station, great radio station called Fourth One. But there, in the meantime, while I was there, this radio station started in London called XFM, and it was like my dream station in every single way. And so I basically just so the station where I was at, I had this new boss who really loved me. I had great prospects, and I just left with no other job lined up and just moved to London. And I just was like, this is going to be fine. And I think every job I'd got up until then had kind of fallen in my lap. Like I'd worked hard, and so I'd been offered the next thing, but I hadn't really had to hustle for anything. And then I moved to London, and I realized that like everyone wanted to work at XFM, and everybody wanted to get into radio, and there actually weren't that many jobs because it was a really small radio station. And just spent I spent like the first 4 months just pacing the corridors of my mum's apartment and weeping and wishing I'd never left my job in Scotland, and really regretting having done that. And then the next like 5 months doing jobs that just like were less good than my old job, and really feeling like a massive idiot for having just naively left this great job to move to London to try and get a job that was actually just not that easy to get.
Wow. And I can imagine a lot of people are watching this and they're nodding their head because, I mean, in your case, you left one job to try and find another job in a new city, but this is the kind of thing entrepreneurs, when they start their own business, get all the time. You know, they have this opportunity, they've got a job, they might have an idea, whether it's for a product or whether it's for a service, and they think, I really want to do this. And at some point, you have to take that leap. And it's always pretty difficult to judge whether, you know, it's too soon or too late. And it is quite difficult to sort of judge where you are in that journey.
So I get like in terms of the entrepreneurship thing, there's a really amazing lady called Pam Slim. Her website is Escape from Cubicle Nation, and she talks a lot about how how basically trying to encourage people to start their business as a side hustle and not just leap into it. Jonathan Fields, as well, of Good Life Project, I saw him speak recently, and he said a lot of the work he does with clients is telling them to get their jobs back. Because often people will be like, I'm leaving the shackles of my job, here I go. And then had the experience that I have of being like, oh, it's not that easy. You know, mine was leaving one job to try and get another, but I think it's kind of a similar thing. And I think a more sensible way would have been to at least have a good sense of if I can get this job or not. Because actually what happened was I then was applying for just any job, you know, and like any job in radio, and started filling out the forms to become a flight attendant for Virgin Airlines, and was filling out the forms, and it said list your last 2 jobs and your main responsibilities. And I thought my main responsibilities included pressing the play button and announcing the song. No one's going to employ me in anything ever. Oh God. And the things that shifted were, first of all, that I had a friend who said, no, transferable skills. You know, if you can talk to 100,000 people on the radio, you can probably stand up in front of 50 people at a meeting and talk. So that was kind of gave me the confidence that I needed to not, you know, throw myself off a bridge or whatever. But the other thing that I did was I kept plodding along, and I got humble. So the first job that I got was doing in-store radio for Virgin Megastores Radio, which at the time, like in retrospect, was a great job. It was actually a national station. I got to like pick my own music. It got me keeping on air. But at the time, you know, people would say to me, do you want to be a radio DJ? And I'd be like, I used to be one. How the mighty have fallen. But I also started doing work experience, started interning at XFM on John Kennedy's show, one of the evening shows. And, you know, I went from people used to alphabetize my post and bring me tea, and there I was alphabetizing the post and making the tea. And actually, in the meantime, I was doing what I didn't realize was networking, but was actually networking, which was just keeping up relationships with the people that I had done student radio with, who were now getting better jobs. And then, you know, trying to get myself out to as many events as possible and sending nice to meet you emails to everybody that I met in those places. And one of them was Graham Bryce, who was the managing director of XFM at the time. So I kind of make sure that I was very visible to him all of the time. And I kept up with old contacts from my old radio station, some of whom were working for the same company as XFM. So I made sure that, you know, I kept those relationships warm. And then actually the way that I got the job was I gave my demo tape to tons of people, but I gave my demo tape to John Kennedy, who is just amazing, but was the DJ who I was doing the work experience with. And he passed it on to his boss. And his boss trusted him. And John, had listened to the tape and liked it, but also he'd seen that I was a hard worker, that I was, humble, that I'd come up, that I wasn't going in going, someone else used to advertise my post. I'm not going to do this crappy job for you. That I just showed up. And so then I got, cover shifts. And then from getting cover shifts, I got my own show once a week, and then twice a week, and then 4 times a week. And then I moved to Weekend Breakfast. And then, I was working there basically full time for 8 years. And I think what I learned from having made that mistake, one is maybe think about things before you take a big leap and see if actually be realistic. Because it wasn't even that I was just being confident or brave. I just was being naive. I just didn't think through the actual consequences. I mean, moving to Toronto, I moved to Toronto pretty quickly. I made the decision over the course of like 4 months that I was going to move. And everyone would say to me, you're so brave, you're so brave. And I was like, no, I'm not. If I hate it, I'll just come home. And then I got here and, the first 6 months was amazing. And then after that, I was like, oh, I am in this city and I don't know where anything is. And I hardly have any friends here. And I don't know what I want to do with my life. And this is really hard, but I don't want to leave. And I hadn't, and again, I don't think I was being brave. I think I was just being quite naive. So don't scare yourself off doing something, but think through what it's going to be like, so at least you're somewhat prepared. But the other thing that I think it gave me this, and it wasn't about me leaving my job in Scotland and making that mistake. It was actually about being unemployed for months and then having jobs I didn't love for months. It was just that the whole time I worked at XFM, which was 8 years in total, I loved my job so much. I loved it. And I kind of was known in the station as being the cheerleader. Because, working in radio, it's really uncertain. The company kept getting bought by a different company and you never know. And there was like one day where, 3/4 of our staff got fired over the space of 2 hours. And you've got that hanging over you all the time. And, people feel that you're not accorded the respect that you deserve and whatever. And people would bitch and moan. And I'd always be like, guys, we work at XFM. It's so amazing. And I kind of feel like every job I've done since, when it's going well, when I'm enjoying it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so lucky. And that's because I did have those bleak times. And I think if I'd always been in work, it would be different. And also I think just the certain amount of empathy, like one of the things that I've had the most people really laugh at in recognition is going through, and I've written about this on the blog on yesyesmarsha.com, but how you go through. So the reason I wrote about this for Yes Yes Marsha is that I hate the question, what do you do? And I think everybody hates it, but people still ask it because they kind of feel they should. And one of the reasons I hate it is because there have been periods of my life where someone says, what do you do? And my heart just sinks. And this was one of them when I just moved to London. And I always used to think, wouldn't it be funny if I told the truth? Like, imagine if you said, what do you do? And I said, well, mostly I paced the corridors of my mum's house, weeping, wishing I'd never left my job in Scotland. What do you do? And actually instead you're like, oh, I'm doing this and this and this. And like, I'm making myself sound really important. And actually inside you're thinking, it's all lies. Yeah, and so I feel great.
All I do is watch TV all day.
Yeah, I feel grateful to have empathy with that position and know what it's like to not love what you're doing. So you really can when you do.
Yeah, no, I love how you mentioned that it kind of made you humble, and I feel like just about anybody who starts their own business, and I'm sure you found it when you moved to Toronto and you started Yes Yes Marsha, you might come from a job where you were a manager or maybe you were an executive, you got paid a lot of money, like you say, you had assistants and everything. This is the background where a lot of people who start businesses, that's where they were in the corporate world, or they had a steady life, and all of a sudden, you find yourself, well, at first you're like, it's going to be fine, I'll find work, I'll find clients, they'll come to me, everyone's got that naivety. And after a while you start thinking, oh my gosh, this is hard. I'm having to give my work away. I'm having to, charge myself and, practically beg people to take me just to get a portfolio built. Yeah, and it humbles you and it changes your entire aspect of life.
And also suddenly you're your own intern. Like you have to make the tea. Yeah. You have to tidy your desk. You have to go and get the post.
And you realise how bad you are at making tea at Cossette. Like, oh God. I can't do this. I need to learn. So I think that's a really key thing. I mean, like you say, yours was coming from, one job and trying to find another job. But I feel this is probably the same journey 90% of entrepreneurs take. They leave their job, they're excited. That first few months is brilliant. But then you start looking at the cash flow and going, wow, I haven't really made anything since leaving that job. And I don't really know what I'm doing. And everything I thought I knew turned out to be not so true. And oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I feel like every entrepreneur has probably had those moments of walking and pacing up and down the corridor, weeping. I think I've certainly had them.
Regretting their decision, yeah.
So now you've obviously moved out. I mean, for anyone who hasn't heard of XFM, probably I'm not sure they get it really in America and North America, but it's one of the cool stations over here in England. And you obviously left that. You went over to Toronto. You've started now your own sort of world. What kind of lessons has everything happened before taken you into what you're doing now? Because obviously you're helping people network, helping people find and start their sort of own little world. What lessons have you taken into that?
Do you mean in terms of like personally my journey, or do you mean in terms of like the work I did then compared to the work I do now?
Well, more sort of a mistake about rushing into things, sort of thinking things through, trying to overcome that naivety.
Yeah, I've been down on naivety this whole chat, but I definitely think that there's a lot of good it can do you, because it does make you brave enough to do things. And I do think it's funny, there's certain things, I mean, walking into a lukewarm sea, it will take me about 20 minutes to get into the water because it's cold and I'm scared. Whereas there's a lot of other stuff that I just will do without really thinking it through. And I definitely think, I was going to say as an entrepreneur, but I think as a human being who wants to do anything other than, the most straightforward, predictable life, there is an extent to which you have to do that, to which you have to like jump into the swimming pool without thinking about how cold it's going to be. And, just take on certain clients or roles, or decide like, I'm going to start a blog, or I'm going to start a mailing list, and then emailing everyone on your list saying, hi, F name at the beginning or something, and realizing that actually like, it's okay. I don't know if it's something that I've learned, but I definitely had this moment a few months ago where I thought, you know what, not everything I put out in the universe has to be perfect. Like not every blog post I write, not every video I make, and if you see my videos, they're very scrappy. There's a lot of wigs. It's a lot of me talking to other versions of myself in different wigs. And I spend hours editing them, but you'd never know how much time I spend editing them because they are still kind of scrappy because I'm self-taught. But realizing that actually doing things is more important than not doing them, and doing them slightly badly is okay sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, you could take it the other way. You left Edinburgh for going to London. You left your job. It didn't go so well in the beginning. So now you could take it the other way and go, well, I'm never going to take any risk ever. I'm just going to make sure that I keep this client, even though I'm not that happy with them, because they're paying. And I'm not going to take a chance, because that's equally as terrible.
Yeah, you know what? I had this moment about 6 months after I'm looking this up because there's a quote that I want to read you that I don't want to get wrong. About 6 months after I moved to Toronto, and I was finding it so hard. And I was thinking, I wish I wasn't brave. I wish that I had just got the most predictable job I could and moved to some, predictable town and got into a predictable relationship and, haven't ever taken any chances at all. That's what I wish that I had done. And then I came across this quote. Excuse my typing. I want to try and find this so that I read it to you properly. Here we go. Came across this quote and it really made a huge difference to me. It's by Helen Keller, who lived in, what is it, the 1900s? She was deaf, dumb and blind, and her nanny taught her to read by, doing like C-A-T and then giving her the cap to hold. And this is the quote. She says, security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. And I really love that, because what I take that to mean is like, yeah, you could pick the safest job possible and the safest town and the safest relationship and the safest family. And then, someone gets cancer and suddenly, and for me, that's like, if you haven't exposed yourself to any danger, stuff is going to happen because it's life, and like people die and people get sick and accidents happen. And if you haven't exposed yourself to any danger, that's going to be so much harder to deal with. Whereas if you drip, 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 expose yourself to kind of danger and newness and surprise, you're going to be able much better to roll with things like that. And certainly I found that in my life.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've mentioned naivety a few times here, and never taking any risk is a form of naivety too, because you're just not opening yourself up into a world. And I suppose ultimately that's my whole point of this journey for talking about mistakes and having people share mistakes, because we need to make them. It's part of living, it's part of growing a business, it's part of making decisions. Not everything is going well. Like you say, sometimes you will release content that's not perfect. It's just all part of the process, and the more you kind of learn to adapt to that and react to it, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really like that quote. So I think it's a fantastic journey because, it's kind of shown both sides of it. A lot of times people will leave their job to start a business and they'll jump in and they'll be a little bit naive, but at the same time they can't let that affect them from taking risk further down the line, because if you ever want to grow, you have to be brave and you have to take the risk, even when it is hard. And you will have the moments where you think, God, I wish I was just like everybody else and I just had this standard job and I didn't have to worry because I was just safe. But, that's no way of living either.
One of my heroes is a guy called Mastin Kipp, whose website is thedailylove.com. And he kind of introduced me to the whole world of like self-development. And actually, through him, I discovered Marie Forleo, and through her, I did B-School. And that's how I ended up, I never thought I wanted to start a business before, ever. Because I didn't want to be anyone's boss, and it never occurred to me that it could just be me and a virtual team. But anyway, Mastin Kipp talks a lot about something that he said that had a profound effect on me years ago, about using fear as your compass. If you're in genuine danger, that's different. But if it's something where you just think, I want to do that, but I feel scared, usually that means that's what you should move towards.
Wow, I like that, yeah. It's kind of a bit of a prod in the right direction. It'll get you excited. Well, I think it's a fantastic journey that it's shown. I mean, you've talked about it from a sort of employee to move into another employee role thing, but I see that journey in just about every entrepreneurial sort of world. It is difficult in the start, and you have to kind of make that jump and learn when it is right to take the leap and to take a step back. So to just sum things up for those those wannabe entrepreneurs, maybe they're still in a job and they want to start that business, but they're not sure what the next step is. What, one piece of advice would you throw their direction?
Oh my God. That life is long, and don't be foolish. If you have a big family and a mortgage, don't chuck everything in with nothing there to support you. But if you're wondering whether or not, you should try and do the brave thing, then just do it, because life's long, and you can, you can afford to be miserable. This is it. You can afford to be miserable for a bit, because things might be so much better afterwards. And that's been the case. That was the case of me moving from Scotland to London. It was the case of me moving from London to Toronto. I'm so happy here now. I'm so rooted in the city, and it's such a much better city for me than London. I mean, I have a lot of love for London, but it was never the right place for me to be living. And both of those, and if I hadn't left Edinburgh, I wouldn't have got to work at XFM, which was amazing, like 8 of the best years of my life. And so don't wreck your family's life, be responsible, do some research, and side hustle when you can, but don't not do something because you might be miserable for 6 months, because you'll get over it.
Well, I suppose that's going to be my final question to you. If you had a choice between living those 6 months of despair again, but you knew that you were going to get 8 years of fantastic XFM life, I mean, it's a no-brainer, right?
Of course you do it. Yeah. And I really think that I've enjoyed the rest of my life so much more because of the misery. I had a roommate, bless her, always used to be like, the darkest night is before the dawn, Marsh. The darkest night is before the dawn. And he was right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been a fantastic insight. Thank you so much for sharing it with us, Marsha. Like I say, I love the path you've taken, and it has been full of naivety and risk and bad decisions, but which has also led to fantastic things. It's, I'm sure, put you in a much better place these days, and well, it's led you to fantastic things with what you're doing at Yes Marsha. So thank you so much. And indeed, viewer, thank you very much for watching / listening. And yeah, from me, cheers.
Thanks, that was really fun.
And there you go, ladies and gents. Thank you so much for joining me. A big thanks to Marsha too for being part of both the Purple Coffee Podcast and the Successful Mistake. I shall say it again. I hope you will join me in the writing journey along the Successful Mistake. You can do so at bit.ly/Purple Coffee 27. But you'll basically find links anywhere on my site. The journey begins. I've now stopped my interviewing process with people, and it's now interacting with fine folk like yourself. So you can help me create this an us book. I don't want it to be mine, rather ours. So be sure to join the journey. And yeah, wow, what great words from Marsha. I absolutely loved this. It goes to show that whether it's an employment-based mistake or whether it's an entrepreneur-based mistake, they can intermingle and can benefit from one another. Some will say up in sticks and just move into a big city like London is a bit crazy, and maybe to an extent Marsha would agree with you, but life is for living, folks, and you get nowhere without taking a few risks. And although she had to hustle and bustle her way back into employment, it was relationships that got her through. And not only did she stop there, but she kept building them. She kept improving how she interacts at networking events and the like. And she now has a business that thrives in that area. She continues to be able to connect with people and help people overcome their anxieties, like what day she had. So I think it's some wise words indeed. I hope you've taken a lot from it, and I encourage you to check out Marsha's site. I'll put all her links to her Twitter and site and whatnot below this video and podcast, so check that out. And if you're on iTunes or Vimeo, head on over to bit.ly/Purple Coffee 27 and you will find all the links that you need. Also, whilst there, you will find info on how to subscribe to this very podcast, the iTunes channel, the Vimeo channel, and if you like exclusive content to your inbox, the email sign-up form thing. So be sure to do that. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes, or just send me a tweet and let me know what you think. It can be a lonely place on iTunes and the like, so I hope you will share some feedback. And also, share it with your loved ones. It's what the tweet and Facebook buttons are there for, so don't keep it all to yourself, you greedy Mr. or Mrs. Share it with your friends, because Marsha's words and wisdom should be shared far and wide. But until next time, I hope you have a fantastic week, and I cannot wait to have you part of the Successful Mistake journey. Cheers.